The physical displacement of air begins in complete silence. A microscopic, isolated movement shifts the atmosphere by fractions of a millimeter. That initial kinetic energy does not vanish. It transfers outward, rolling through the air currents until it reaches the surface of a quiet lake, expanding into physical waves moving across the water. Over time, those waves stretch across vast distances to displace thousands of gallons of water. The final outcome is massive, yet it remains physically tethered to that single microscopic source. This creates a gap in our perception, because the final wave often hits a distant shore long after the butterfly has moved on. We lose the link between the two events. This time lag makes it difficult to see the connection between a small cause and a massive effect. Because we cannot see the full chain of events in real time, we often dismiss our own everyday choices. We assume that skipping a task or ignoring a person in need has no long-term weight, simply because the result isn't immediate. The invisible threads connecting our smallest actions to massive changes are not a metaphor. They are a systemic, physical reality. To understand the mechanics of this escalation, we have to examine stored potential energy. Even a completely still object holds energy, waiting for a minor catalyst to release it. This progression chart demonstrates the math of exponential growth. A 2-inch block contains enough potential energy to topple a block 50% larger. Force multiplies rapidly. Under 29 iterations releases enough energy to trigger thousands more. Human behavior operates on these exact physical mechanics. Every single micro-decision you make carries a specific amount of potential energy that is released into the next event in your life. A seemingly isolated human action serves as the required trigger point for a chain reaction that eventually moves far beyond the individual's control. This compounding math writes human history. Observe the complexity of any sprawling 20th century metropolis. Inside those walls, a low-level bureaucrat signs a routine requisition form, or two obscure engineers share a trivial 5-minute conversation over a meal. At the moment that conversation ended, the immediate consequences were completely unfelt. The participants likely forgot the exchange before the day was over. But a specific concept from that brief discussion planted a localized idea in the mind of a secondary party, who carried that thought back to their own department. Over the following decades, that localized idea transferred across dozens of departments and iterations. It eventually became the blueprint for an invention relied upon by millions of people. Massive historical milestones are rarely the result of a single explosion. They are the delayed, accumulated results of thousands of forgotten choices. The exact same compounding formula governs the internal, microscopic network of the human brain. Tiny, repetitive daily behaviors lay down the physical tracks we call neural pathways. Committing to an isolated 10-minute habit physically alters the density of your brain tissue over time, making that specific action the default setting for your future self. This branching diagram tracks the long-term impact. As those neural pathways thicken, they force your future choices to diverge, splitting a single timeline into different, mutually exclusive trajectories over a 10-year span. Because small, repeated habits dictate the physical structure of your brain, no action you take is truly neutral. Apply this math to the immediate reality of a mundane morning routine. Dedicating time to read one single page of a book per day seems statistically irrelevant. Yet over a decade, that specific, isolated input yields over 3,600 pages, the equivalent of consuming a dozen entire books on a single subject. The financial equivalent follows the same curve. Directing a trivial daily monetary saving into a modest yield snowballs over a lifetime, mathematically transforming pocket change into a substantial asset. The social compound effect operates the same way. Offering a single act of unprompted kindness transfers positive momentum to a stranger, altering how they interact with the next person they meet. These actions accumulate in silence. The inputs build for years without offering obvious milestones or immediate rewards. The public outcome of a life, whether it is an achievement or a collapse, is simply the final data point in a sequence of thousands of these smaller, private choices. Multiply that single compounding lifespan across a bustling modern metropolis to see the millions of complex, overlapping trajectories. Every individual on the grid is simultaneously the living result of countless past historical ripples and the exact origin point for thousands of new ones. Since every movement triggers a reaction, neutrality is impossible. Every decision you make adds a new variable to the global equation of the future. On a staggering global scale, these unseen ripples continuously collide and compound, reshaping human civilization in real time. You will never see the final end of your ripple, but the choice you make today provides the specific momentum that dictates the shape of tomorrow.